Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Happy Life with Maria podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Mr. Tyler Henson. And for those who don't know, Tyler Henson and him and his wife are part of a real estate team in Nashville, Tennessee. So, welcome, Tyler.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much. So, just a little recap to people who don't know. We met through an online platform from Ryan, and we both got started with the same book from
That's
Ryan.
right. Yeah, that's right. Ryan Serhant.
Yes, super exciting, super exciting. What a great community. I love that community. So thank you for agreeing to do this for me. So I would love to have a little bit of a backstory about before you got to real estate. What was your life before that?
Oh gosh. I kind of had a wild ride of a life. Not to go into too many details, but in my late teens and early 20s, I battled with pain pill addiction, and just struggled with that for years. I was actually homeless for a brief few months of that.
Wow.
Still high functioning. I was still in college. That was right before I flunked out. And then I was still working. I was actually a general manager of a Subway. I don't know how I was managing that, but anyway, ended up, giving my life over to God, completely set free, total transformation. And, life just didn't go the direction that I thought it was going to go. I set out on my path, in college, to get a marketing degree, and was going to do, something with that. And of course had this, ideal life in mind. And it just kind of got derailed, by my own decisions and my own actions and mistakes. And, not to go too deep into that, but, things just kind of didn't pan out the way that I thought they would. And I was kind of kidding myself. I really thought that I was in this transitional period of my life, and that it was just temporary, right? That I was going to get back on track. I was going to, get back on that same path. Like after I'd flunked out of, college, and basically I had just lost my scholarship and had to pay some of that back before I could go back. And then of course, I didn't have scholarship money, so I was going to have to pay for that. And in my mind, I was working this temporary job. I was living in a temporary place. Like, this is just kind of my vehicle for now. Like, this is my, life right now as I'm on my way, right, to something bigger. And then I realized that I hadn't made any progress. Like, I was still in that same state. I was no closer to going back to college than I was the day that I flunked out. And that this wasn't a temporary job. Like, this is what I do for work, and I'm struggling to pay my bills and all this stuff, right? And that was before, the transformation. And so, once I went through recovery and all of that took place, my perspective on everything changed and my goals changed. And I didn't really care about, the stuff that I once cared about, because it was no longer important. I wouldn't say that I didn't believe that it was possible. I think maybe part of me did believe that a little bit, but also it's just like, it's not what's important anymore. I want to have peace in my life again. I want to have joy. I want to, be, fulfilled in life. I want to be able to pay my bills on time every month. And it would be great if I could enjoy like what I get to do for a living, but that's really, really about it. And so I
Wow.
ended up stumbling my way into a job at a transportation company, and then ended up getting promoted into an operations manager type of position, and really enjoyed that. Really didn't see myself, leaving that position, and ended up meeting my current wife. My wife now, Jackie.
Yes.
She we ended up getting married and then buying our first home together, and that was really what sparked the real interest in real estate. So like one of my temporary jobs was in construction, and so I really started enjoying more of that than I ever did. Like growing up, I was like remodeling rental homes and stuff and working on houses with my dad, but I hated it. I hated it at the time, and so I was felt kind of stuck in that construction position. So I just started leaning into it, and and started enjoying, parts of that. We did a lot of commercial stuff, but like I really enjoyed the residential side. And then when we bought our first home together, you know, we didn't have the greatest experience. Like there was no issues or anything, but just not a lot of communication. And it left us, I don't know, just a little anxious, just not knowing what was around the corner, what to expect. And of course, me being in operations, in operations management, I just knew like a little bit of systems, put in place could go a long way. And, it stuck with me, and I ended up telling my wife, Jackie, I was like, I really want to get my license and learn this business and give people the experience that I wish we would have had. And that just kind of sparked it. It was just supposed to be like a side hustle thing, and, that was really it. But long story short, it really started taking off, and then she started helping me with it, and then this dream was born that we could do this together. And we just took a really big leap of faith, and we kind of made the commitment to ourselves, like, you know what, like if we make less money than we did before, it's okay, as long as we can pay our bills and we can do this together. That's what matters, and we get to enjoy what we're doing, do it together. But of course, God blessed us even bigger than that, because what happened after we took that big leap of faith was that our business exploded. And so we've been able to, help a lot of people buy and sell their homes in the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area, everything from large farms to little starter homes and tremendous luxury homes and downtown penthouses and everything else. And so it's just been an incredible ride.
I love it. That's so incredible. Thank you for explaining like the gist of it. Yes, I love that you guys literally started from absolutely nothing and took I guess, placed a bet on yourselves. You
We
decided
did.
to bet on yourselves and like, oh, let's try this other thing. Who knows where it's gonna lead us? We don't know it's gonna happen, but at least
Yeah.
we're gonna give it a shot and look how that ended up turning out even better than you could have ever imagined. Like, did you even um, know that it was going to come out the way that it came out?
Oh gosh, no. I honestly didn't even think that it was possible for us, really and truly. I can remember like even having a conversation. Not that it was never a goal to be a full-time real estate agent, right? And now it's, we have a husband and wife team. We just added another agent, to our team as well. She's awesome.
Congrats, congrats.
But we that wasn't really the goal. Like it wasn't our intention to like start this, real estate business and, shift into that. Originally it wasn't. Now, as time went on, and we really started enjoying the business and we started doing it more and more together, then it became more of a dream. Like, all right, like I kind of think we can do this. Like, let's just time it right. Like, let's just pray about the timing about this. But yeah, I can remember in my first year, having a conversation, with our broker. And I thought, I was like, I don't know how anybody does this for a living, because I was just kind of doing the math in my head. And of course, homes were, a lot cheaper back then, right? And, paid off a percentage. But, I was just doing the math in my head of what it would take just to replace my income, with the added business expenses. And I'm like, gosh, I would have to sell a lot of houses, and I just had no idea what was around the corner. But, I just didn't set that expectation, really for myself. I didn't really, but I also didn't set limitations other than I just didn't think that was, I didn't really think that was a big possibility because it wasn't really what I was pursuing. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't pursuing like a big business and selling luxury homes and all this stuff. So I didn't really think that was possible, but it wasn't that I thought it was totally impossible, I just it just wasn't the direction that I was going, right? And so
Yeah.
that shifted, of course, and I started focusing on our clients and serving our clients, doubling down on marketing efforts and like just doing everything that we could I never wanted to be that like agent that was always asking for business. I felt like it was just so terrible that you couldn't even have a conversation with a real estate agent without them trying to like sell you, or just, ask for a referral or something like that. So I never wanted to be that, but then I had to shift because I'm like, if I believe that we can give people a better experience, then they have to know, like they have to know that, and we have to get that out there. And so since then, it
Yes.
shifted into, we've learned a lot from Ryan Serhant, and we've been able to incorporate a lot of personal branding, which is never like a push, like a hard push of like, oh, use me, use my services, refer me, but it is just putting it out there, like who we are and what we're doing and how we do it. And it's just attracting, those types of people that want to work with us, that are looking for that. And it's always been the case. Like even when rates went up and everybody was talking about, what was it, date the rate, marry the house, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
we were never trying to talk anybody into something that they weren't comfortable with. Like
Mm.
our marketing mentality and like branding mentality was always like, look for those people that want to move, and like we're gonna help them, like because we're brokers, we're not salesmen. I'm not a salesman, I'm a broker. So I help broker a transaction. If somebody wants to purchase a home or sell their home, right, then it's my job, right, to broker that transaction and facilitate that, and try to get that to the finish line, and all the nuances in between and navigating that is really where we excel anyway, and so it wasn't about just trying to find somebody, and talk them into something. It was just, there's people out there that want to move, they want to buy a house, or they want to sell their house, or they need to, or whatever their situation is. Like, let's fire into them, and so
Yeah.
we've been able to focus, just focus on that, and really just didn't pick our head up to look ahead at what was going on, and that was a long way around to say that, but yeah, we
Yeah.
just continued on that path. And like next thing we knew, like, we've sold a bunch of houses, we've helped a bunch of people, and it's just been incredible.
No, I love, thank you for sharing. I love what you're basically explaining is yes, in the beginning, like it's so unknown in the beginning. It is so
Hmm.
kind of difficult to know which way is it going to go, how is it going to go. But like you said, you don't want to be the one to push and, can I get, do you need a referral? Like, like, you don't want to be doing that. So I think, yeah, like you mentioned, like with Ryan's obviously really strong training on branding, I feel like is definitely super helpful tool to be the one to show what you are offering and then let them come to you, right? So that instead
Yeah.
of you are pushing and whatever, you all you were doing is that. So talk to me a little bit about what would be like one of the top, I guess, tips for, I guess, whatever works for you for branding. Would you say just showing on social media? Would you say being more in a physical location out there with people? What were your favorite things that worked for you? And then what happened in the beginning? Because I remember you mentioned it exploded so much that you guys were almost burnt out. You were saying yes to
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a really good question. So I'll start from the beginning. Um, I think I had a misunderstanding of what branding was and what personal branding really was, and that was able to be clarified. We started working with one of Ryan's brand strategists, and just kind of working through that. And my interpretation of it was more like PR, right? Like how we want to be perceived,
Mm,
right? And I had to learn that personal branding. We already have a personal brand, and it's who we are. It's That's all that
mhm.
it is. It's just it is who we are, um, within the context of life, right? But also within our business, and so that requires us showing who we are in the content that we post, and that's inside of our work and outside of our work, and so in order for people to get to know us, and that's the whole thing, is this like, know, and trust factor, and that goes with any business, right? That you the fastest path to being liked, known, and trusted is going to be the fastest way to gain new clients and customers, and people that want to work with you. And that's who you want, right? Is as a customer, is you want people that want to work with you. You don't want to have to always go through this like struggle because they're always skeptical of you and your methods and how you do things. It doesn't matter what business that is, right? No matter what that is, if you're a doctor, a chiropractor, barber, whatever it is, you don't want everybody that comes through the doors to be so skeptical, right? But the way to get through that is they get to know you and who you are, and they begin to like you and they begin to trust you, and so they know what to expect, but the caveat to that is that you have to be who you are. And that's difficult for a lot of people to put that on video and put that in the pictures that they take and the captions that they write and all this thing, especially in the age of AI where everything is so AI coded, that we end up, a lot of people end up with scripts, that they read from, on these videos, especially agents that read from these scripts, or they'll memorize these scripts and then they'll cut, to these just beautiful homes, and like all that stuff is great, right? There has to be an entertainment factor there. But what's been really effective for us is that we show so much of our personality in every shred of content that we put out, that people who follow us on social media, they will feel like they know us already before they ever meet us. But then we have to be true to ourselves and who we are, right? Because if they meet us in person and we're totally different than the person that they got to know online, that's going to break their trust immediately. It's going to send up a red flag. So what has really been the most effective for me is just knowing that, like, who I am, I've just got to put it out there, and not everybody's going to like that. Not everybody's going to connect with that, but that's okay, because it's going to be the exact same way if I meet them through any other method. Is that, when we begin working together, not everybody is going to be a good fit, and sometimes you have to start working with each other a little bit in order to figure that out. Social media, if we let it, we put ourselves out there, we'll begin to attract the type of people that connect with us and that want to work with us, and it's not a mystery, at that point. And so that's what's been, that's what's been the most effective, for me. And I know it doesn't work for everyone, and not everyone wants to have that, personal side of their business. Some people want to have this professional persona that they can kind of turn on and off and clock out and all these other things, but that's just not ever the way that we've done things. It's always been, on a relationship level and a connection level, and we want to really enjoy the people that we work with. We want them to enjoy working with us.
I love that. Yes, thank you for sharing. It does sound like a lot of the times the general, I guess, concept is, oh, this is a business page, so I only share about the business, A, B, and C, straight to the point, and that's it. There's really no story there. There's really nothing to connect to there. It's just a very straightforward, simple business related page, which doesn't really attract people. It's just a little bit on the boring side, if you would say. But if you're taking the time to open up a little bit about, you have a family, you have the life that you have, what your journey has been like, all those things, I feel like then it sounds like they can relate to you. They see that you are a regular human who has regular, like your own life outside of work, and that can help them relate to you. I feel like, so that's a really strong point you bring up. Thank you so much. And what happened? How did you get to the point where it was so many that you guys had almost burned out, and then you had to shift to a different direction?
Yeah, I think the market kind of did that on its own, so obviously it was the post-COVID frenzy, that, we were just, overwhelmed, by everything. But, we did just take on any and every client, because our belief, right, was that it wasn't about the dollar, of course, money is great, but our belief was that like we can serve them better, that we can give them the better experience, right? But we had to realize like sometimes not everyone is a good fit. And so, we did, when things did start slowing down a little bit, and transactions took longer to close and listings took longer to sell, right? And buyers were more particular, so they were taking extra time, to find the right home, and that's great. There's nothing at all wrong with that. However, what shifted was that we could no longer handle being locked in with clients that weren't a good fit. And so, because it would just drain us and deplete us, and we weren't able to serve the ones that were a good fit, that really, really wanted to work with us and believed in, how we marketed a home, or, believed in our process, for showing houses or whatever, just some people are just going to click and some people aren't. And so it would begin to take away at the point that it begins to take away from those ideal clients, those people that want to work with you. We had to start shifting toward trying to attract, and a lot of that was through, social media and personal branding, and started, having the need to attract the type of people that want to work with us, that really, really and truly want to work with us. And, that's the people that we enjoy, working with, right? It's like when we have the best relationship and they trust what we're doing, because we're gonna give it our best shot, and we're gonna, do everything that we can, and they trust that we're gonna do that. We're gonna have a good working relationship, right? And we're gonna figure this out, no matter how wildly the market shifts, right? While we have their home listed, we're going to continue to work together to find a strategy to get their home sold, or we're going to come to the conclusion that, hey, this is not the right time, like they really need to get this out of their home. And, we've done absolutely everything that we can, and the market just is speaking, and it's just not happening. Like, let's just stay here, or let's just rent it out, and, we'll shift or whatever, make a pivot. And then we can come to that conclusion together. And we're always on the side of our clients that, that if, we want to do what's best for them, and there's some of them that we're going to talk to, and, we're going to say, hey, this is not the best time for you. Like you just don't have enough equity setting there. It's going to be really tight, and it's going to be really stressful. If that's what you really want to do, like, we'll go for it. But it's those types of clients that, even in a difficult market, you're really working together, at that point. And so that's what we just had to shift. We had to shift and start, focusing on, trying to attract, those types of clients that, connect with us and want to work with us.
Yeah, and thank you. And it sounds like it definitely was the right move, because I remember you mentioned that you're one of the best, I guess, clients that you do enjoy working with are, obviously you guys in the luxury level, right? So you do usually work with, I think you mentioned the music industry, right? Are the ones that and that's like one example of the clients that you do prefer, because they have, most of them, I guess, in Nashville, that's, I guess, where most of them would want to be. And then I feel like it's kind of like a good, I guess, entry point right there. And then you have people who definitely will be interested in, I feel like the personalities match, probably like you and your wife, like you guys work together, right? So the personalities probably match. Tell me, what do you feel was like your favorite kind of clients to work with?
I mean, really, any client, like I said, any client that really, um, believe in what we do, and trust, we can go far, we can do the most with that, and we can serve them the best. And so a lot of times that does end up being our luxury clients. We do have a heart, a passion to serve people in the music industry. It's such a thriving part of Nashville. There's also a massive healthcare industry in Nashville. It's
Oh,
like the
yeah.
healthcare capital of the country.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Isn't
Really?
aware of that. Yeah, but really, and it's all parts, right? A lot of people think, music industry, and they just think of artists, but it's, there's artist managers and producers, and there's just so many different, right, positions and levels to that, and just musicians. So there's, we do have a particular skill level to serve those types of clients, and we connect with them really well. But a lot of times we find, in the music industry, or maybe it's executives, people who own, large businesses that, are like high level entrepreneurs. Those are the types of people that, once we earn their trust and they get to know us, they place a lot of trust in us. And like I said, that's where we can serve people the best, because we're going to be looking out for them 100%. And once they learn that and know that, and just let us serve them, as their agents, then we can go above and beyond. And like we get so much more fulfillment out of that than anything really.
So sounds like you definitely end up creating a relationship, and it matches, I guess the personalities match, and I guess the goals match of what you are able to serve and what they are looking for. And it feels like it creates, I guess, like a steady relationship that in the future, or if they know somebody else who might be needing something, they already have in mind, oh, this team, right? Husband and wife team understand our needs really well. Their personalities match with what we are, and I feel like that kind of creates a good connection, right? Because you have to connect with them, right? It's still people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Talk to me about, you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, the role that faith plays in you going after the clients, or I guess them coming to you. How do you, like, for people who are a little bit afraid to trust in the creator, in the higher power, how do you learn to trust that there is high power, that not everything is in your control? And does that actually help in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of course, my faith and trust in Jesus is the, biggest part of my life, period. 1000%. I believe I wouldn't be here, without that. I would just encourage anybody just to be curious, and seek, to get to know him. And it just takes a small amount of faith. For me, I can really just only talk about my personal experience, for the most part. I was raised up in church, but of course, went my separate ways, and formed a lot of, opinions and all these things, through just experience and the world and things that I heard that made sense and all this other stuff. And so when I did have just a small amount of faith coming back, and just had this belief that, my life would be better if I just gave up control, and allowed God to have control over my life. And I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what that looked like. And I really didn't know God, really and truly. I had all these Bible stories from the past, and, Sunday school and all these other things, but I didn't really know him. And so what I started with was just curiosity. Like, if I am going to really believe in this thing, I want to know what it's all about. I want to know the truth. I want to know, is this thing that I've believed about God my whole life, is this actually the truth, or is this just something that I picked up on, that seems right? And once I just started diving deeper in that, I realized that God really, really wasn't who I thought he was. He was so much better, and so much better. And it was just, I always just was fearful of God in an unhealthy way, that just as a disciplinary figure, and I'm not going to say that I was necessarily taught that, but maybe just in my childhood mind, that was what I equated it to. And that's just the conclusions that I had drawn. And I realized it was not about that at all, that God's ultimate desire for me is to have a connection with him. And that's what we all want, right? It's just connection. That's what, at the end of the day, like when we strip it all away, the most fulfilling things in our lives, as long as our basic needs are met, is just connection, with other people. And knowing that the creator of the universe wants a connection with me was such a powerful thing.
I love it. I love it. Yes, thanks for sharing that. Yes, I feel like in the beginning, yeah, people get a little bit scared, like they want to be in control of everything, right? Like I'm the one in
Mhm.
control of my life, so I'm going to do everything myself. But I feel like what they don't realize is if you let go of control a little bit, you may be surprised as some, items that you wouldn't even be able to create yourself can flow into your life when you decide to, I guess, partner with creator, right? Or whatever you
Yeah.
call higher power. How has that helped in your business, for example? Can you give us an example
Yeah,
of letting
absolutely.
go of
And
control?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know how, deep, down that path that you want to go, but yeah, I mean, I think really and truly what I've discovered along the way is that our problem is not necessarily I don't know, our problem is really that we try to control things that are beyond our control. And it's not necessarily that, nothing is in our control, right? We understand, that we do have a responsibility, but our problem is when we really try, most of us, I think, struggle with trying to control things that are beyond our control. And I think there's a lot of freedom, no matter what you believe. I think there's a lot of freedom in realizing that there's things that are beyond our control, and when we stop trying to control those things and focus on what we can control, and that's a recovery thing, of course, and just focusing on the things that we can control. Um, we have so much more peace in that, and knowing that it's not always the outcome is not always up to us, right? And so that thing alone is what really gets us through the ebbs and flows of the real estate business and the real estate industry, because it ebbs and flows a lot. I think no matter how strong and how big your business is as a real estate agent, the fact of it is for most people, there's a lot of ebbs and flows. There's a lot of gaps. There's months where we feel like we've never been this rich in our life, and then there's months where we feel like we'll never close a single deal again. And what really gets me through that is that faith component, and letting go and saying the results are really and truly not up to me.
Mm,
The work is up to me, and the results are up to God, and sometimes they're up to just other people, because people have choice and they have control of their own lives and they make decisions. And like, just because this person decided not to buy a house right now because it wasn't a good fit for them doesn't mean that I didn't do a good job, because my job is not to talk them into something that they don't want to do. My job is to serve them and to help them explore that option. And ideally it does lead to them purchasing a home, and I walk them through that process because that's where my biggest value add is, and that's really the job itself. But sometimes there's things leading up to that, that um and and just because they go down that path and they realize, like, it's not a great time for us to buy. If it's really and truly not a good time for them, then I did my job. I did a great job, and just because I didn't get a result from that resulted in, commission and, pay and all that, doesn't mean that I did a bad job, right? At all. And so I think that we can kind of confuse that. Like when things don't play out as real estate agents, we can confuse those results, with it being up to us and it being our responsibility, and in reality, like, that's what's best for that person. And what kind of person would I be if, I put that on myself when it's like, it's not a good time for them to buy. It's not a good decision for them. Or, they got a job offer in another town and they're like, hey, or another city or another state. And they're like, hey, we're not going to be here but another 3 months. Like, we can't buy here anymore, you know? So it's just focusing on that, like, the results are not necessarily up to me. Like, obviously there there's a lot of things that are my responsibility within my control. And there's times where I haven't done everything that I could to the best of my ability, right? And that's on me. But that's really just my responsibility, and being able to let go. and just have faith and trust that, the results aren't always up to me. The work is. Then I can have a successful day, whether we close a transaction or not.
I love that. Yes, thank you for sharing. I love the way you put it, right? So our part is to do the work, right? But the
Mhm.
results is really not up to us, right? That's not something that's in our control. And it's funny because it reminded me of many times when I would be, focused on, okay, I want to get this client, I want to get that client, and then if I don't get a client, I used to be upset, but then I would be like, oh, wait a minute, I would kind of just have the bigger picture in mind. I'd be like, okay, it didn't work out, but maybe there's a different reason for it. And then literally like 2 weeks later, I'll get an even better client that I would have never even happened had that didn't get removed from my past. So sometimes, yeah, sometimes we get like surprised in a way we don't even realize that can happen by, like you said, just trusting that there is something beyond our control that's really running
Yeah,
the show. And all we have
that's
to do
right.
is, like you said, we just do our part. We take action every day. We stay focused on what we want to create, and let the things fall into place the way they're supposed to fall. But most of the time, we really cannot force anybody or like be in control of every single thing, right? We only do
Yeah,
our part. So I love the way you described it. Yes, it's super helpful, I feel like, to know that not every single step has to be perfect, not every single transaction has to close perfectly. Just
yeah,
knowing that you're doing your part is more than enough. And then let it unfold in the way that it's supposed to unfold, right? And you just kind of let it all kind of get together for you. I love it. I love it.
yeah.
Thank you so much. So before we close, I usually have this interesting little segment I do. It's called Question Everything. So these are cards one of my favorite journalists created, and they are super fun to just kind of get to know the person if you're open to it.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, okay. Oh, okay, so I'm just gonna pick random one. Okay. What is the smartest decision you've ever made?
Oh gosh, the smartest.
Hmm.
It's an interesting
Hmm.
way to
It could be, it doesn't have to be work. It could be your wife. It could be.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, really and truly, not to continue to go back to the faith thing, but really the smartest thing I ever did was just, put my trust in God. And it was a total transformation of my life and just the freedom and the peace that came from that. I don't know that I would be able to have a successful business like I have if I wasn't a transformed person, like I am. If I was just continuing to struggle with the insecurities and all the other things that I was battling in the middle of my addiction, there's no way I would be able to, build something quite like this and to be able to serve people. Like it takes humility, to be able to serve people in any industry, and without that, I wouldn't be able to have anything, no good relationships and no good, uh, business and client relationships and things like that. So that was definitely the smartest thing.
I love that. Yes, and I love that you mentioned peace, because I think one of the biggest things that arrives into your life is peace, because
Hmm.
you're no longer trying to, go up the hill by yourself. You're no longer trying to push and create everything by yourself. You
Yeah,
realize that you have help, right? You have higher power. You have, it's not just you, and you can kind of relax a little bit, be a little bit less stressed, knowing that there's like an invisible team that's working with you all the
yeah,
time.
that's right. That's right.
I think, yeah, the peace factor is really, I love that you said that. That's literally what happens once you realize that you're not by yourself. That's
Yeah.
that's perfectly said. I love it. I love it. Thank
Thank you.
you. Um, Ooh, well, this is all same kind of a theme, I guess. What parts of yourself do you feel most proud of? I guess.
Oh gosh. Those are good questions. Yeah, I like that. I have to get a set
Yeah,
of those cards
get you
myself.
thinking.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
like
they
you mentioned,
do.
right, you have to show your personality also, right? So now you have to open a little bit if you're open to share. So what do
So
you
yeah,
feel
say that
most
again. Can you
proud?
read that question
Okay,
again?
yeah,
I'm
let
so
me read
sorry.
it again. Okay. So what part of yourself do you feel the most proud of?
Oh gosh. I mean, there's so many things I could say. I'm just gonna pick something. I don't know that it's what I'm most proud of.
One of them.
But just yeah, something that I'm proud of in myself is um, you know, I feel like I'm a good question asker. I feel like I'm good at asking questions. Obviously that's not my role here, being a guest on your
That's okay.
podcast.
That's okay.
But
We're talking about you, so
that's something, that's really something that I wanted to pursue is to be able to just ask good questions, because I am generally interested, yeah, in people and knowing about them and hearing about them and you know, in order to learn about people and have this connection, you have to be able to ask good questions. And
Mm,
uh, coming from my place of addiction, where I was really insecure and um, you know, an insecure person, in the middle of addiction like myself, really struggled to ask questions because you always feel like you're having to prove something and prove yourself. And, I was hiding behind so many masks and all these other things and just putting on this facade to try to be liked that I think it was just to me, that was like a sign of like just confidence and just being okay, with not talking about myself when I could just sit back and just ask somebody a good question about themselves and be really interested in what they have to say. So that's definitely something that I'm really proud of.
I love that. You know, what's interesting is thanks for sharing that level of insecurity that you mentioned. That's most people. Like a lot of people have a lot of insecurity. Obviously, I'm not on the level that you mentioned where you got the addiction part. And I'm very happy
Mhm.
that you got yourself out of that. Good decision right there.
Yeah,
Took a lot of work, obviously, but it was worth it, sounds like. But I feel like the insecurity part, it affects so many people. And it does happen to get to the point where we are like, let's say I would be afraid sometimes to ask a question also. I'd be like,
mhm.
oh, what are they gonna think? Oh, I'm gonna
Yeah,
look, not that smart if I'm gonna ask a question. I better just
yeah,
figure it out. Like I used to do that in my old job. I would just not say anything. I would just be like, oh, I got this, of course I got this. And then I'm sitting there, I have no idea how to get this done, but I have to get this done. And then I would
yeah,
cause myself so much more stress. It would take so much longer. Then it would have been so much faster if I don't just ask the question. And it
yeah,
would have been like
yeah,
a 30 minute.
100%.
But I was so scared to say it. I think, like you just said, I was like in my head, I was like, that's gonna be, they're gonna look at me differently if I'm gonna ask for help. Like it was very difficult to ask for help. Like it was like, no, I cannot say that. No, no, no. I have to be
Yeah,
perfect, like I cannot ask for
yeah,
help. No, no. But then you get to the point, like I was so exhausted figuring everything out on my own. And I was like, you know
yeah,
what? I think I'm just gonna have to start asking. I think I'm just gonna have
yeah.
to
Oh,
whatever
that's
they're
so
gonna say.
true. That's yeah, another part of that too is that, in a lot of situations, it's not just asking somebody a question to get to know them, but sometimes asking a question is kind of admitting that you don't know what somebody's talking about, or, like like you mentioned. Yeah, and so that one was a big one for me too, was, being able to just be like, I don't know what they're talking about, or I don't know about this, and that's okay, because I'm gonna ask them about it. That was huge for me, too. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because I was just remembering that. I was like, I used to drive myself crazy. Just be like, no, I have to get it perfectly right. I'm not gonna say. But then, yeah, I guess you learn, I guess, through life that it's okay that
Yeah,
you can ask questions and you can, be okay with it. You're not the only one. Probably a lot of people have the same question anyway, so
yeah,
you're not
absolutely.
the only one. But yeah, I just remember that. Yeah, that was definitely a huge life lesson for me back in the day. And then the point that you were making as well, where asking people questions gets them, I guess, interested to connect with you, right? If you ask them questions, then
Mhm.
they want to connect with you because they feel like you're listening, right? The two basic needs of any human, right? They want to be heard and they want to be understood, right?
Yeah,
So when you ask questions, they feel like they're being heard, right? And then
yeah,
when you're listening, like, oh, maybe they understand me, maybe I
yeah,
can say a little bit more, and then they want to connect with you, right? So I think that that's definitely powerful, which can be a little bit, yeah, a little bit difficult in the beginning to do. Like, what would you say was, I know I'm going in a little wrong direction and we have to stop in like a minute, but what would you say made you feel more comfortable about asking people questions about themselves? Was it just trial and error? Was it just like see how it goes? Like, how did you feel more comfortable with that?
yeah. I just had to do it. I just had to do it, and just
Same.
make that a priority in my mind, and like almost like give myself a pep talk, going into meetings and networking events and things like that. Like, I'm here to ask questions. I'm here to get to know people, and in order to do that, I have to ask questions. And so just reminding myself of that and just doing it. And sometimes you're going to ask what seems like a stupid question, but most people don't care. They don't, I mean, they're not going to think anything else about it, afterward. You're the only one that's going to be thinking about it. And just kind of realizing that, like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. If you ask the wrong question or whatever, you can say, oh, I'm so sorry, and move on. But it was just doing it, it was just doing it.
Same. Yes, thank you. For me, the same thing. I just had to just start doing that, and then it became like more of a habit, and then you're afraid less of it once you have crossed that line. And you're like, oh, this is not that bad.
Yeah.
um, but we have like 5 minutes, so before we wrap up, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you a little bit and say, that it's amazing what you have been able to transform your life into by making the choice to choose yourself, to try to be open to a different life, a different experience, more enjoyable for you, even though it was a big risk. You didn't know how it was gonna come out. But even with the addiction part as well, like just choosing the recovery path, right? That was, I guess, the biggest step, right? Just being on that path of recovery has opened up your life to huge possibilities, like you said, which would have never happened have you been stuck in that world. So first I wanted to acknowledge you for choosing that direction. Bravo to
Thank
you.
you.
And
Thank you.
yeah, and then look how many people you're helping now, right, in the Nashville area, and they're connected to you as a person because they value you, who you are today, like they value who you have become, and how you listen to them and how you ask them questions, and they feel seen by you. And you're only able to do that, right, by becoming this version of you, however long that took and whatever, the path
Yeah.
that took. So definitely wanted to acknowledge you for that. And the second thing I wanted to mention is there anything that you want to share, I guess, to people who are maybe in a situation that they don't like right now and they feel like there's no way out? What would you want to say to them if there's anything you'd want to say?
Yeah, I would say there's always hope, for a better future. Like there's always change, there's always, transformation is always possible. And, circumstances are never permanent. It's never permanent. So there's always an opportunity, for better. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Yes, just knowing that it is possible, that there is a possibility, I feel like is step one to
Hmm.
making that change. That's the first step. Okay, thank you so much. So how can people find you on social media or our website, we will link everything as well. Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to connect, I've been talking about personal branding. Best way to connect is probably Instagram.
Yeah.
It's, at Tyler Henson, TylerHenson. And then actually growing my TikTok channel as well. And that's at
Oh,
just the Tyler Henson. I had to add the "the" in there. Somebody
no
took the
way.
name. So, but also, on our website as well, hensonteam.net. And connect with us there, on a professional level as well, if you'd like. But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on the podcast today. It's been really great.
Thank you so much. Yes, same here, same here. Very happy that we made this happen and that it came out fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye.